You won't believe what my daughter did on her 18th birthday. The day my daughter turned 18, I thought it would be just another milestone, another birthday celebration, another cake. But what happened that day completely shattered everything I thought I knew about her, about our family, and about the bond we shared. I couldn't believe it. Before we jump into today's video, I need your help. We've noticed the channel is losing some traction, and subscribing is one of the best ways you can support us. It's quick, free, and it helps us keep bringing you awesome content. Your support means the world. Let's keep this channel growing together. Thanks so much. Now let's start the video. It started like any other birthday. I woke up to the smell of pancakes, my daughter, let's call her Emily, cooking in the kitchen, humming her favorite tune. Emily had always been a good girl, responsible, and polite. But as I walked into the kitchen that morning, there was a strange tension in the air. She barely looked up at me. Something was off. "Good morning, Mom," she said quietly, flipping pancakes, her voice lacking the usual enthusiasm. "Hey, sweetheart, everything okay?" I asked, trying to shake the feeling of unease creeping in. She nodded, but I could tell something was wrong. I didn't press it at that moment. I assumed it was just nerves. Turning 18 was a big deal after all. As we sat down to eat breakfast, Emily's dad, my husband Tom, joined us at the table. He gave Emily a big hug and wished her a happy birthday. The awkwardness seemed to dissipate for a moment, but it was short-lived. As the morning went on, I couldn't shake the feeling that Emily was keeping something from me. And then it happened. Emily turned to us and said, "I need to talk to you both about something." My heart skipped a beat. This wasn't just a casual announcement. The look on her face said it all. We sat there, waiting, unsure of what to expect. I could feel my pulse quicken as Emily took a deep breath, her eyes shifting between Tom and me. She looked so grown up, so much older than the little girl I had raised. The weight of her words seemed to hang in the air, making the room feel smaller. "I've decided to leave for a while," she said, her voice steady, but her eyes betraying a hint of uncertainty. Tom froze. I felt my stomach drop. This was the last thing I expected. My mind raced with questions. Where was she going? Why? Was she running away? "Leave? Emily, what do you mean leave?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. I didn't know if I wanted to hear the answer. She looked down at her hands, fiddling with the edge of her sleeve. "I've been thinking a lot lately, about my future, what I want to do with my life, and I think I need to be on my own for a while. I've already made plans." I could feel my heart sinking further with every word she spoke. A million thoughts flooded my mind, but the only thing I could manage to say was, "But you're 18 now. You're still our baby, Emily. What happened to staying close, to being a family?" She met my gaze, and for a moment, I saw the same spark in her eyes that I'd seen as a child, when she first started dreaming big. But this time, there was something else there, something unfamiliar. "I think I need to find my own path, Mom. This is what I want." I wanted to argue. I wanted to beg her to stay, to not leave. But at the same time, I knew I had to respect her decision. Emily wasn't a child anymore. She was an adult, and this was her moment to step into the world and figure things out for herself. Tom and I exchanged a look, one that said everything and nothing at the same time. The room was thick with emotion, but we both stayed quiet, letting Emily's words sink in. The silence that followed felt suffocating. I could hear my own heartbeat in my ears as I tried to process what Emily had just said. She was leaving. It wasn't just a fleeting thought, it was happening. My mind refused to fully accept it. "Where will you go?" Tom finally asked, his voice tinged with concern. "Do you have a place to stay?" Emily hesitated, and that hesitation cut through me like a knife. She hadn't planned every detail, but she was determined to go, to find herself. "I have some friends who've offered to let me stay with them for a while," she said, her eyes avoiding both mine and Tom's. "And I'm looking at places nearby, but I think it's time to start figuring things out for myself." "Nearby?" I echoed, my mind racing to make sense of it all. "Emily, you can't just leave like this. What about school? What about your family? We're here for you." She finally looked at me, and there was no trace of the uncertainty I had seen earlier. Instead, there was a quiet determination. "I need this, Mom. I've been thinking about this for months. It's not just about leaving home, it's about growing up. I don't want to be stuck in the same place, never knowing what else is out there. I need to explore, to see the world, to know who I really am. I don't want to wake up one day and regret not having tried." Her words hit me harder than I ever expected. It was hard to admit, but I knew deep down that she was right. I had been so focused on keeping her close, keeping her safe, that I forgot to prepare myself for this moment, the moment when she would spread her wings and fly. "I understand, Emily," I said, my voice thick with emotion. "But I'm still your mom. I'll always worry about you. You're my baby." She smiled softly. "I know, Mom. And I'll miss you too. But this is something I have to do for myself. I'm not abandoning you. I'm just going to find my own way." Tom cleared his throat, his voice soft. "She's right, you know. As much as it's hard to let go, we raised her to be strong, to make her own decisions. We have to trust that she knows what she's doing." I looked at Emily again, my heart swelling with a mix of pride and sadness. She was doing what I had always wanted for her, to be independent, to find her own voice. But it was still so hard to let her go. I stood up and walked over to her, pulling her into a tight hug. "I love you, Emily. I'll always love you. Just be careful out there, okay?" She hugged me back, and I could feel the weight of everything she was leaving behind, everything she was about to face. "I will, Mom, I promise." The next few days passed in a blur. Emily spent most of her time packing and finalizing her plans. It was like she was in a rush to leave, as if the moment she turned 18, everything she'd known up until then no longer mattered. I tried to convince myself that I was being dramatic, but deep down, I couldn't shake the feeling of loss. She had always been so independent, even when she was a little girl. It was one of the things I admired most about her. From the first time she stood on her own 2 feet to the first time she drove herself to school, I knew this day was coming. But no matter how much I prepared for it, I didn't expect it to hurt this much. It was the night before she was supposed to leave that it hit me hardest. She sat in the living room, surrounded by her bags and boxes, her clothes neatly folded. I sat across from her, watching as she worked, and suddenly, all the years of her childhood, the late nights we spent talking about her future, and the years I had poured into making sure she had everything she needed, all came flooding back. "You've grown up so fast, Em," I said softly, my voice almost breaking. "I'm not sure I'm ready for this." Emily looked up from her bag, her expression softening. "I know, Mom. I know you're scared. I am too. But I think it's time. I don't want to be stuck in the same place forever, doing the same things every day. I need to go out there and figure things out for myself." I nodded, swallowing the lump in my throat. I had to be strong for her, even if my heart was breaking. "I get it, honey. I just don't know how to let you go." She walked over and sat next to me, her arms around my shoulders in a comforting hug. "It's not goodbye forever, Mom. It's just the beginning of something new, and I'll always come back. You know that." "I know," I whispered, holding her tightly. "But it's still so hard." "I love you, Mom, more than you'll ever know." "I love you too, Em, so much. I'm so proud of you." The next morning came too soon. The sun was barely rising, and Emily was already up, double-checking everything she packed. I could hear her moving around in her room, the sound of zippers and the rustling of clothes. I could hardly breathe as I stood at the kitchen counter, sipping my coffee, trying to hold myself together. The reality of the situation was setting in, and it felt like I was losing her, even though I knew this was a step she needed to take. I made breakfast, though I barely had the appetite for it. My heart was heavy, and my mind was racing. What if she wasn't ready? What if the world was too harsh for her? What if, once she left, things between us would change forever? I tried to shove these thoughts aside, but they kept creeping in, weighing me down. "Mom, I'm ready to go," Emily called out from the hallway. I turned to face her, my heart stopping for a moment. She was standing there, suitcase in hand, looking so grown up. She had always been my little girl, but now, as she stood before me, she seemed so much older. My eyes welled with tears, and I quickly wiped them away before she could see. "You look so beautiful," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. Emily smiled, her eyes sparkling with excitement. "Thanks, Mom. I can't believe it's finally happening." "Me neither," I chuckled softly, though my heart was breaking. "I'm proud of you, Em. I hope you know that." "I do, Mom," she said, walking over and giving me one last hug. "I know you're scared, but everything is going to be fine. I'll be okay." I squeezed her tightly, not wanting to let go, but I knew I had to. She was ready. "Go on," I said, pulling back and wiping my eyes. "Make your dreams come true. I'll be here cheering you on every step of the way." She nodded, then grabbed her suitcase and made her way to the door. I stood there for a moment, watching her walk out, her future waiting for her just beyond the threshold. But before she left, she turned around one last time, a mischievous grin spreading across her face. "Don't worry, Mom. I'll call you when I'm settled in. You won't get rid of me that easily." And just like that, she was gone. I stood there for a moment, the door closed behind her, and everything in the house suddenly felt too quiet. The stillness echoed in my ears, making it feel like the walls were closing in on me. I couldn't help but feel that this was the beginning of something huge. She was off to live her life, and I was left behind, trying to adjust to a world without her footsteps filling the hallways. I had spent the last 18 years preparing for this day, but nothing could truly prepare me for the silence that followed her departure. It was strange how quickly the house felt empty. I walked back into the living room, my eyes landing on the couch where she used to curl up with me on rainy afternoons. There were so many memories tied to this place, so many moments that had shaped who we both were, and now it felt like everything was just slipping away. But then my phone buzzed. I grabbed it, hoping it was her already texting me, letting me know she'd made it safely. Instead, it was a reminder from the bank, a notification about the payment for her tuition. The lump in my throat grew bigger. It was a simple notification, a sign that everything was moving forward, but it hit me like a ton of bricks. I had done it. I had raised her, given her everything I could, and now she was out there in the world, taking on life without me by her side. And that was exactly how it was supposed to be. But it didn't make it any easier. The truth hit me. I had to let her go. She was ready, and I had done my job. But damn, it was hard. I sat down, feeling the weight of it all. She had always been my little girl, the one who needed me, the one I could protect. Now, she didn't need me the same way. And though that was something I should be proud of, all I could feel was a hollow ache in my chest. But I knew that this was her moment, her chance to shine, and deep down, I knew she was going to do amazing things. Still, the thought of her being out there in the world, navigating everything without me by her side, left me with so many mixed emotions. I wasn't ready for this, but I had to be. I had no choice. A few hours passed, and I found myself sitting on the porch, staring out at the street, waiting. My mind kept racing with a million thoughts, but none of them were about what I expected. I wasn't thinking about the future, or the fact that she was starting her journey. I was still stuck in the past, in those moments when she would come home from school, excited to tell me about her day, when she'd ask for help with her homework, or beg me to stay up just a little longer. I didn't realize how much I missed those simple moments until they were gone. I knew she was doing exactly what she was supposed to do, taking on the world, figuring it out for herself, but a part of me just wanted to freeze time. I wanted to relive the moments when I was her everything, when she needed me like I needed her. But as much as I longed to go back, I knew I couldn't. I couldn't keep holding on. She was growing up, and this was her life now. I had to let her find her own way, even if it meant that I wasn't the center of her world anymore. Then, just as the sun was beginning to set, my phone buzzed. It was a text from her. "I'm okay, Mom. I'm really going to miss you." Tears welled up in my eyes, and for a moment, I didn't know whether to laugh or cry. She was letting me know that she missed me, but that didn't change the fact that she was out there, doing her thing. She was independent, and that was exactly what I had hoped for. I replied, "I miss you too, but I'm proud of you, always." And as I read those words back to myself, I realized something I hadn't fully understood before. This wasn't the end. This was just the beginning of a new chapter for both of us. She was going to grow, and I was going to have to grow too. I wiped away a tear and looked up at the sky. The world felt a little quieter, but it also felt like there was more space to breathe, more space to find myself again. I had spent so much of my life focused on being her mom, but now I needed to focus on being me again. And I was ready for that challenge. The following morning, I woke up with a feeling I hadn't expected. It was a sense of emptiness, but also a strange sense of freedom. The house was quieter than it had been in years, and for the first time in a long time, I realized that it was just me now. I could finally sit down and enjoy my coffee in peace without being interrupted every 5 minutes. I could do whatever I wanted without having to check in with anyone or rush around. But that feeling of freedom didn't last long. The silence was overwhelming. Every room seemed empty, and I found myself walking through the house, touching the places where she used to sit, sleep, laugh, and dream. It felt strange to think that she was out there, creating a new life without me by her side. It felt like I was missing a piece of myself, like something vital had been taken away. I tried to focus on the positives. She was out there following her dreams, meeting new people, and becoming the woman she was always meant to be. But it didn't stop me from wondering if she was okay. Was she eating right? Was she making friends? Did she remember the lessons I taught her? That's when it hit me. I wasn't the only one who had to adjust to this new phase of our lives. She was out there, just as unsure and vulnerable as I was. I had spent so many years teaching her to be strong and independent, and now it was her turn to prove that she could handle the world on her own. But That didn't mean I wouldn't worry. It didn't mean I wouldn't miss her. I sat down on the couch, thinking back to all the advice I had given her over the years. Don't be afraid to make mistakes. Take chances. Be kind. Stay true to yourself. I had always told her to stay strong and confident, to follow her heart. But now I realized it was time for me to take my own advice. I wasn't going to stop worrying about her. That was impossible. But I was going to trust her, just like I had always asked her to trust me. She was ready for this. She was going to be okay. And so, with a deep breath, I stood up, took a step forward, and began to embrace this new chapter of life, just as she was embracing hers. That evening, I received a message from her. My heart skipped a beat when I saw her name on my screen. It was a simple text, but it meant the world to me. Hey Mom, just wanted to let you know I made it. Everything's good. I miss you, but I'm doing okay. I love you. Reading those words brought tears to my eyes. In that moment, I realized that this wasn't just a change for me. It was a change for her, too. She had taken that big step into adulthood, and she was learning how to live without me constantly around. But the truth was, she was still my little girl, and she always would be. I couldn't help but smile as I thought about all the years of guiding her, teaching her, and supporting her. The little girl who once needed me for everything was now out there, making her own way. I had done my job as a mother, but I realized that it was okay to be proud and let go. That night, I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling and reflecting on everything that had led us to this point. My daughter was no longer a little girl, and as much as I wanted to hold on to her forever, I knew it was time for her to spread her wings. It was time for me to let her go, and that thought, though bittersweet, filled me with a sense of peace. The next morning, I received another message from her. This time, it wasn't just a simple update. She had sent me a picture. It was of her in a coffee shop, sitting at a table with her laptop open and a warm drink beside her. There was a soft smile on her face, and she looked happy. Seeing that image, seeing her looking so independent and content, brought everything full circle. She was exactly where she needed to be. And in that moment, I realized that she wasn't just my daughter anymore. She was a young woman, carving out her own path in the world. I couldn't have been prouder. I hit reply and sent a message back. I'm so proud of you. Take care of yourself. I love you. And with that, I allowed myself to truly let go, knowing she was ready. As the days passed, I found myself adjusting to the new normal. It wasn't easy, though. There were moments when I'd find myself walking through her empty room, running my fingers across the objects she left behind, the books, the photo frames, and the little trinkets she'd collected over the years. It felt like there was a void in the house, one that could never quite be filled. But as much as it hurt, I knew this was just a part of life. The weeks turned into months, and she would call, text, or send updates every now and then. It was comforting to hear her voice and know that she was doing well, but one weekend I noticed that her messages had become less frequent. At first I tried not to worry, thinking she was just busy with school or new friends. But then the silence stretched on for days. I reached out to her, but she didn't respond. The worry began to creep in. Was she okay? Had something happened? I was torn between giving her space and the overwhelming need to make sure she was safe. After all, this was the first time in her life that I wasn't there to take care of her. One evening, I couldn't take it any longer. I grabbed my phone and dialed her number. My heart raced as I waited for her to pick up. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the phone rang. Hello, her voice answered, and a wave of relief washed over me. Sweetheart, is everything okay? You haven't been responding to my messages. I've just been a little worried. There was a slight pause on the other end of the line. Mom, I'm fine. I've just been, trying to figure things out. I'm sorry for not updating you sooner. It's not that I don't want to talk. I've just been a bit overwhelmed. I felt the tension in my shoulders release. I understand. I just wanted to hear your voice and make sure you were all right. I'm doing okay, Mom. Really. I could hear the sincerity in her voice, and it made my heart swell with pride. She was growing up and learning to navigate the world on her own, just as she should. I could feel a sense of relief settling in, knowing that she was handling things, even if it was a little more challenging than she expected. Just don't forget to keep me updated, okay? I said with a soft chuckle. I will, Mom, I promise. As I hung up the phone, I realized that even though there would be moments of uncertainty and distance, she was going to be okay. She was strong, independent, and capable of handling whatever came her way. I didn't need to be there to fix everything. She was becoming the woman I always knew she could be. The next few days were a whirlwind of emotions. I could still feel the shock in my bones, the unease that was so tightly coiled within me, but I also had to admit that something had shifted inside my daughter as well. Watching her grow up, seeing the woman she was becoming, filled me with an emotion I can barely explain. In a way, what she did that day, while shocking at first, was her way of showing me that she was ready for the world, that she had a spark in her that I couldn't ignore. We talked a lot after that night, and I could sense that a part of her had matured. She wasn't just a little girl anymore, but an adult with dreams, aspirations, and the courage to follow her heart. I realized that she needed to experience life on her terms, even if it made me uncomfortable at times. The truth is, we often don't know how much we can hold space for until we're pushed to our limits. As a mom, I always thought I could protect my child from the world. But the truth is, I can only guide her. She has to make her own decisions, and sometimes she has to make the hard ones to learn and grow. I know I can't keep her in a bubble forever, and while part of me wants to go back to when she was still that little girl who held my hand through every moment, I realize that's not fair to either of us. The woman she is becoming is incredible, and it's time for me to take a step back and let her fly. As scary as it is, I am proud of her for being bold, for standing her ground, and for following her heart. I can't wait to see what she does next. Looking back at everything, I can't help but marvel at the way my daughter has grown. From the little girl who used to seek comfort in my arms to the strong, independent woman she is today, it's clear that she has a mind of her own and isn't afraid to chase after her dreams. I'll be honest, it was hard at first to accept that she was taking steps into the unknown without me by her side, but now I realize how important it is for her to carve out her own path. What's the lesson here? Sometimes as parents, we need to let go and trust that we've raised our children to make wise choices. They may take risks, make mistakes, or take us by surprise, but ultimately those experiences are shaping them into the people they are meant to become. If you've ever had a moment where you had to step back and let your child soar, you know how emotional and rewarding it can be. What about you? Have you had a moment like this with your kids? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. Let's support each other in this journey of parenthood. And don't forget, if you enjoyed this story and want to hear more about the highs and lows of family life, make sure to hit that subscribe button. It's quick, free, and it really helps our channel grow. Your support means everything to us. Thank you for being part of our family here, and I can't wait to share more with you in the future. Until next time.